Welcome back to Training Transformers, the podcast that digs into the science and strategy behind modern learning and development. Today, we have a very special guest who truly embodies a mission of transforming training with a dose of real world psychology. Joining us is Amy Duvernet. She's an industrial organizational psychologist and the current VP of Learning at Training Industry. Amy pairs scientific research with practical application. With a background of designing learning programs for Fortune 500 companies and a current role at training industry, Amy is a fantastic resource for anyone listening to us right now who is trying to make their training more effective. So, Amy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So, your background is so unique. It's just that you're not just a training expert, but you're also a research professional with a PhD in industrial organizational psychology. So my first question actually ties down to connect both of these worlds and is about the gap between what we know and what we do. So in terms of as an IO psychologist, you're an expert at, connecting the science of learning with what actually works in companies. So what's like one big myth right now about training that L&D professionals or training professionals are often getting it wrong, and how can they actually fix it with like a more scientific approach?
Yeah, absolutely. We've done a ton of research actually here at Training Industry on the big L&D myths, and there are a number of them that kind of are pervasive that despite a lot of research that might discount them, I think they're really they're intuitive, they're easy to grasp onto, they feel right. So hard to kind of dispel those myths. One of the bigger myths is around the 70-20-10 model.
Mm.
So for those that don't know, this model says that that people learn in kind of three different ways, and 70% of what they learn is coming from informal kinds of learning experiences, and that 20% is coming from social or peer-to-peer learning, and then 10% is coming from that formal actual training scenario. So this is an interesting model because it does invoke some good positive things, right? Because it asks learning professionals to really consider the various mechanisms and to consider a blend of different kinds of learning techniques to really impart what they're trying to train. It is often, though, adopted, right? So people will say, I'm implementing the 70-20-10 model in my organization. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is problematic when we think that those ratios are set in stone. So if we look back at the original research, it was not meant to be generalized across all contexts. It was a small sample. It was asking executives to reflect on, and by the way, it was a CCL, Center for Creative Leadership, that did this research in the 80s, asking executives to reflect back on what it was, how did they learn the best, how in the past year, what was the different ways that they learned. And they filled in open-ended comments, and then the researchers went in and coded those into these three buckets, and that's how they derived the 70%, the 20%, and the 10%. Well, fast forward several decades, and we've done a number of kind of looks at this in other contexts, and what you find is, the classic psychology answer is it depends. Depends on your context, it depends on what you're training, it depends on your learners. There are so many factors that play into what the appropriate or optimal ratio of different kinds of learning are to kind of blend together in a specific training program. So all of that to say that it's a nice model in that it communicates some good pieces, but we want to be really careful about it's going to apply in every context.
Right. Okay. That's interesting to hear about. Uh, I mean, going back again to your background of industrial organizational psychologist and your work in learning programs for Fortune 500 companies as well, and now you're at training industry. So how has this journey been really for you? And tell us something about how did you actually reach here right now?
Oh yeah, thanks for that question. I actually spend a lot of time studying L&D careers as part of my role here, and so I've given a lot of thought myself to kind of how I ended up here and what that journey looks like. So if we rewind back to my college days, I aspired to be a cruise ship doctor. I thought it would be really nice to travel the world, hand out Dramamine. But I quickly kind of found myself being pulled in the direction of psychology. It was really appealing to kind of think through what motivates behavior and understand kind of some of the unconscious biases and unconscious ways that our brain and our bodies work to influence how we behave. And I came across industrial and organizational psychology as a really nice way to take those theories and those ideas, but apply them in a practical way. When I got to grad school, I fell in love with statistics and metrics. I had no idea because math was not necessarily my favorite before that. But when you think about applying statistics to understanding human behavior, it became super fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
So I got really drawn into the statistics world, and I spent a lot of time looking at job analyses, work analyses, competency modeling. I worked at ONET, which is a division of the Department of Labor, focused on analyzing all of the jobs that make up the workforce in the US. So I spent some time working there, breaking jobs down into various components and looking at how they all fit together. And then I moved into a selection role, so hiring, developing hiring assessments, and looking at various characteristics of applicants that would eventually be predictive of performance on the job to help hiring managers make smarter employment decisions. And I really liked that role because it allowed me to have kind of a statistics focus. It was a remote role, so I wasn't thrilled with that. I really like being in person. So I ended up moving to training industry and taking on, at the time, I was heading up our research department and looking at best practices in the training field, which was really interesting to me because it gave me all of that research and statistics pieces that kind of scratched an itch that I had. But I wasn't able to see that translate into actual kind of implications for organizations because it was more high level.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up moving into this, well, the precursor of this position when we launched our CPTM program, the Certified Professional and Training Management Program. That appealed to me for a couple of reasons. It gave me a psychometric look at the exam. I was able to do a lot of analyses there and understand the predictors of performance on the exam, as well as how it predicted future outcomes. But it also gave me the opportunity to take research findings from the research that we still do here at Training Industry and translate them into learnings and application and really practical pieces of advice and learnings for learning leaders. And then I could actually kind of see the impact of that as well. So it gave me a lot of those pieces that were really interesting to me and that really drove passion for me. And then fast forward to today, my role has really evolved into more of a business leader. So we have a number of courses and certification certificates for learning professionals, and I run that line of business, which has been a great challenge in terms of learning new skills, marketing, sales, finance, as well as giving me the opportunity to, again, just really see the impact of the work that we're doing in the lives of our customers and clients.
Fantastic. So you're wearing many hats right now in your role.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. Yep. I have a fantastic team that, they do all the work. I get to interact and help kind of guide them. So
It's kind of an interesting journey. Yours have started from psychology and then got into
mhm.
statistics and now into L&D. So in learning. So yeah, that's quite interesting. I think on the show there have been many guests till now, and all of them have said that L&D was not something we actually chose, but we have fell into it,
That's
and
right.
that's generally what happens. But yes, quite an interesting journey for you. In terms of now, let's talk about I mean, L&D professionals do spend a lot of time on their trainings, but they can't always show how it has changed the business side of it. So if you're an expert in advanced data and measurement statistics, as you just said right now, for the average L&D team, what, that might only be using some simple feedback forms from the employees, or what's like a very simple but smart way that they can start to measure if their training is actually making some difference to their organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. Gosh, measurement is one of those areas that's often kind of the bigger challenge for L&D professionals. I have a ton of kind of previous training in measurement through my PhD, but I think a lot of folks find their way into L&D without that kind of measurement background. Um, well, the first thing I would say is smile sheets don't have to be just simply smile sheets, right? So we can ask them if they like the food, if they like the training, how they, did you like your instructor? And those pieces are not necessarily going to be super indicative of how effective the training is. Or we can ask them smarter questions in those surveys. So, how useful was this training? For how useful was this training? How likely are you to apply this on the job? Do you feel more confident now that you've had this training? So questions that ask about their perceptions of how effective the training is. Research has shown that that is far more related to actual transfer of training than things like, did you like the training? So we call those utility reactions, but items or questions that are designed to gauge whether they think that the training is going to help them perform better on the job. And then, if you have the opportunity to do more than your surveys, there are some great, easy, quasi-experimental design techniques that you can implement to get a good feel for it. So, a great kind of simple solution is to have a pilot group go through the training. If you have the opportunity to hold back one group and put one group through, and then measure them on whatever kind of the key metric is post training to see if there's a difference between the two groups. Also, I think a lot of folks neglect that pre-training assessment. But doing a pre-training assessment before they go into the training and one after can be a really great way to just get a different score there as well. So a simple, easy way could still be asking them questions, but asking them in smart ways and using timing to ask that so that you can kind of find differences. Mhm.
That's really great insights about, especially about the pre-training assessments. I haven't heard that one before. That's definitely something new, because in our own company we have an L&D department, and we generally just provide a feedback form at the very end of it. And I was just thinking of ways that this can be better. It could give more information to the person who's actually designing the training about what actually works for the employees. So yeah.
That's right. Yeah, here at Training Industry, when we onboard new employees, we give them a survey about their confidence in each of the different kind of skill areas that are going to be part of their job,
Yeah.
as well as where they perceive training need. And we do that before, and then we do at the midway point in onboarding. And then at the end of onboarding, we also give the exact same survey so that we can see kind of the progression of, did it at least from their side, from their perceptions, help them to feel more confident or more capable in those areas.
Right, fantastic. That's a great thing. Uh, Now we do know that, the entire workplace right now in the corporate world is evolving with new technology and new challenges right now in the digital world. Now, with work changing so fast, what are some new skills or new mindsets that learning professionals should focus on right now in order to stay relevant and, become more like strategic leaders in the companies, where they're actually talking with the business stakeholders about what is working in their trainings, what is not working? What do you have for that?
I love this question. I actually just wrote a column on this for our summer issue of our magazine, Training Industry Magazine. Yeah, so skills that we should focus on to be future ready. I hate to say it because everybody's saying it, but AI, tech savvy, digital savviness. We just wrapped up our career survey and found that learning professionals who are using AI across different core kind of L&D responsibilities are performing better in those responsibilities. It also, interestingly enough, folks who were using AI more frequently reported higher salaries. So that's correlational data. I can't say for sure that the use of
Yeah.
AI resulted in higher salaries, but we did see that those were related. So very interesting there. I think, yes, the technology is rapidly changing, and the best that we can do to keep up with it is really important. Also, agility, as you just said, the world of work changes rapidly. And so being able to really adopt that growth mindset and practice agility is going to be a really beneficial skill set. So that means challenging assumptions. That means teaching your brain to accept change. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can try to build that mindset. That's going to be a really core and key skill set as we continue into the future. One final one, pretty timeless, but very important is communication skills. I think as we move into this new AI enabled world, there may be some tendencies to rely heavily on tool sets to craft our communications. And I just want to underscore how important it is to make sure that you're putting your personal touch on the way that you interact with
Yeah.
folks. Building rapport, building those relationships is going to be really key to staying relevant in the future.
Yeah. And still staying human in the world of AI now.
That's
That's
right.
definitely
That's right.
important.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, now with your background also of an industrial organizational psychologist, how can companies use these principles of psychology to do more than just training, like to improve things like finding the right people for a job, or giving employees some feedback that actually will help them grow?
Yeah, absolutely. So, IO psychology, put boiling it down to what kind of exactly it is just really applying, scientific approach to the study of workplace behavior. And I think that applies across all of the different employee journey or life cycle stages. So from hiring all the way to kind of retirement or turnover, all of these kind of pieces of the employee life cycle can be studied and looked at in a scientific way. And so when we look at the field of IO psychology, what IO psychologists tend to bring is the scientific approach. Precise measurement of behavior is really important to being able to predict it. So we often talk about the criterion problem. How do we measure performance? How do we really turn that into a numeric piece that we can then look at in relationship to other variables? I don't know, I'm sure some are familiar with the field of people analytics. This is a great area that IO psychologists have been expanding into in terms of really being able to pull metrics together and create kind of real-time information about what's working and what's not working in organizations, whether it's hiring processes, whether it's employee engagement or satisfaction, turnover rates. How do we measure performance? How do we encourage the right things, incentivize the right behaviors? All of these things can be studied scientifically. And so people analytics functions are really taking all of this massive amount of data that we now have available from various HRIS systems, CRMs, marketing systems, and pulling it together to create these insights. So I think the value add there is being able to communicate those in a way that's not too high in the sky, not too scientific, but really providing those data insights to the right folks so that they can make informed decisions to help organizations function in the most healthy way that they can.
That's fantastic to hear. So this is a science or a science-based approach that actually works on all the aspects of an organization. It's not just learning. So you can probably
Right.
make a lot of decisions based on those numbers, on your recruitment, on your learning programs, on how you can actually grow your employees. So maybe people management as well. So
That's
that's
right.
really
Yeah.
interesting to hear. Definitely.
Absolutely. And the key or the unlock there is when we take all of that and think about it together. right?
Yeah.
When we think about training as a separate from selection and from performance management and from leadership, uh, all of these things, if we silo them off, it's going to be really hard for them to be as effective as they can. So when we can pull all the data together and think about how they all kind of interrelate from maybe more of a systems thinking perspective, that's when we really unlock the power of the analytics and that insight.
Fantastic. So making sense of the numbers. Yeah, definitely. Uh, I mean, you already said that AI is it's a huge game changer right now at the workplace, in terms of skills that a L&D person can have. Uh, but from your perspective as like learning scientist, like what's that one way that AI can actually make learning more effective? And what's like one thing we need to be careful about as we are starting to use it even more?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been some headlines recently about this study from MIT that learners, or I think it was students who were working on an essay, were using or leaning into AI, and they did some EEG readings. So they hook them up and get some information about activity from their brain. And the folks who were using AI were exhibiting less activity.
Yeah.
So the big scary headline is that using AI is going to help, is going to decay our brain, right? Our brains are not going to work as effectively. We're not going to be utilizing them as much. And so I think there's maybe a lot of fear out there about using AI and how it's going to impact our learners and what that's going to mean for us as training professionals. I actually think it's going to be really helpful, right? So it provides real-time tools to our learners right there. And so if we can really teach them how to work with the AI, how do I prompt the AI? How do I think about using this? And what are my guardrails? Like, what shouldn't I be asking about? Then we've given them the tools. As you mentioned earlier, Tejas, it's like skills are decaying rapidly, right? So we
Yeah.
need to give them tools that they can use right now in the moment of need that's going to help them to keep those skill sets up. So again, I think AI represents some scary because the way that we work is going to change, but it also represents a lot of opportunity to provide knowledge right at the time of need, and to maybe free up some areas of our brain to think about other things. So I think that's what I would say about the benefits or the advantages, that you can be really more personalized and use AI for coaching and practical applications. In terms of caveats, an AI agent is only as good as the information that it was trained on. So if your learners are using ChatGPT, it's not necessarily going to be privy to all of your proprietary information, which means that they may not be getting contextualized answers that would really be very helpful in the workplace. So we have to think about that. And then obviously, your organizations are going to need to have some form of governance. What is okay to share with AI or your AI agents? What isn't okay? How do we react to the answers? Are we just copying and pasting the answers? Are we running them through some kind of fact check? And as we move into this agentic world where we're going to start assigning tasks to agents, how do we check their work to make sure that it's okay? What kind of work is okay for agents to work on versus what needs to be, a human being? And I think those of us in the learning and HR space have a lot of opportunity to have a voice in what that looks like.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. The content security part is definitely a major thing right now for
Yeah.
companies who are using AI. In terms of the modern learners who are in the workplace, in terms of your data and what you have researching right now, training industry, uh, do you think right now that the nature of the content which is provided to those learners is changing in terms of like maybe before they provided more static content, more like video workshops or like presentations? Is that now changing where modern learners they are trying to get satisfied by, okay, I need gamification of some sort, I need to know that I have a course pathway to follow, or maybe there are some batches available, some certifications available, on the dashboard where I can probably do my courses. So how is this right now in terms of the transition from print to maybe digital content? How is that working right now in the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Learner expectations have shifted.
Yeah.
We have we have entertainment at the tip of our fingertips. From Netflix, on-demand content, YouTube. We also are expecting that in our learning. We want our learning to be engaging and entertaining. There needs to be incentives to engage or to interact with it. So, as you mentioned, gamification, badging, things that can help motivate, help us feel like we're getting recognition for what we're learning. And then, yeah, to your point, I mean, I think certainly learners are looking for the content to be fresh, to give them just what they need. They do not want to be clicking through multiple different slides and an e-learning that they're reading just to get to the answer. And then when we don't really think about creative ways to get that content to them, we risk that they are really just not going to be consuming it. So, yeah, I think that's spot on that expectations are shifting and changing. And as learning professionals, we have to be aware of those expectations and meet them where they are.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's good. Uh, so now moving to the last segment of our show, Amy, what is like the one advice you can share right now with our listeners? They could be from L&D, training background, that can help achieve their training success, that can actually help show some progress in the training journey right now.
Yeah, absolutely. The one piece of advice that I would give if we're really trying to improve our training success, something that I think we often overlook is marketing. When we roll out a training program, it is critical that we have thought about the communications that happen prior to learners getting into the program, the communications that happen during the program, the experience that they're having in the program, and even post-training marketing is a key factor. Our research has shown that the perceptions and the expectations that learners bring into the training program dramatically impact those outcomes. So if they come in feeling like this is going to be helpful, they are far more likely to have those transfer of training and improved business outcomes on the tail end. So really important that we're thinking about how do we apply those marketing principles to our training programs. I would also say that even outside of laying the ground with our learners, making sure that they understand what they're going to learn, making sure that they know this is going to be a great experience, and all of those kinds of pieces. Marketing is really key for your stakeholders as well. So you can design the best training and it can have the biggest effects, but if you are not sharing that out and promoting the value that you're bringing, your stakeholders aren't going to know about it. So really important that you're also thinking about communicating out the that's easy to understand and that really clearly ties what you did to business outcomes.
Absolutely, yeah. I think tying your training to business objectives right now is a really trending topic right now in terms of justifying the ROI of L&D. So yeah, that
Absolutely.
definitely feel that's quite important in promoting your work as well or whatever you're doing. So yeah,
That's
that's
right.
great advice. Uh, Thanks a lot, Amy. This has been an incredible conversation. Your insights have
Yeah.
provided clear path for listeners to think more scientifically and strategically about learning. Thank you so much for your time today, and thanks for sharing your wisdom with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was great. It was great questions. You had really nice kind of thought-provoking things to ask. So this was fun.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot for that. And that's it, folks, for this episode of Training Transformers. Huge thank you again to our guest, Amy Duvernet. If you want to learn more about Amy and her work, you can find a profile in our show notes. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into the world of learning and development. Until then, keep transforming your training.